Welcome back to The Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians and lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Join me as always, Mr. MAGA Jesse. How you doing there, buddy?
Doing good. Yeah, we got plenty of good stuff to get into because we've got this U.S. Senate race that is heating up here in Minnesota with Tina Smith retiring. We'll be discussing all of the candidates, everything that is going on within that Senate race, just from the early onset, from what we're able to see. We'll be discussing a primary bill that is going to move the primary date to align itself with the presidential primary. This is going to crush the grassroots and make sure that the endorsement process is thrown away with. They want to make sure that the establishment can control the narrative, and obviously they don't want these endorsing conventions because the people can overrule the establishment. We'll be discussing President Trump and obviously how he is exceeding most people's expectations. He's met my expectations for how he is going to be in office. So I see we got Tucker 91, Crucified 1993, Brad Ganser, Chad Weber, Becky Hack, and Carol Hexam already in the chat here on Rumble. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. Make sure to leave a Rumble rant if you want to make sure your comment is read.
All right, Dustin, I don't think we're live on X, just FYI. Not that it really matters. Not like we really have much of an audience on X anyhow. You know, it's still one of those things where it's like, I don't know, even with Elon buying it, how much I care about that platform. I've never really been a big fan.
You're on it.
What's that?
It's up.
It is up now? Yep. All right, cool. So we'll try to read comments from all platforms. We broadcast live on YouTube, Rumble. Rumble's where we read most of the comments, and it's up there, and that's how you can leave us a Rumble rant. But also on Facebook and X. All right, our show is brought to you by the great people. Boy, did I screw that up. The great people at Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. It's brought to you by Warren Wessel, the great people with Warren.
Yeah, he's probably got great people around him.
He's got great people around him, of course, yeah. My friend Janice, she's a realtor at Keller Williams with him. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give the great people at Warren Wessel Realty a call at 612-419-7453. You don't need a bunch of people. Honestly, Warren's good enough himself. But a great realtor thinks the way that you and I think, also does a great job. If you're, he sold my home, this is about 7 years ago now, in like 4 days. And then it was just a terrible real estate market like today, but he helped navigate that world so well and ended up finding a good home for my growing family. So there you go. Give Warren a call. If you're buying a home, give the good guys at John Galt Mortgage a chance at financing the home. I would finance my home through them. Unfortunately, they weren't even in existence 7 years ago. They're a relatively new company, but the good guys, the founders there, have started this great real estate marketing company called Platform Marketing. And so now they got they want two sides of the equation. So they're going to also do financing for mortgages. You can go to johngaltmortgage.com. They're licensed in a growing number of states, but definitely here in Minnesota and the Wisconsin area. Well, I don't know that. I'm pretty sure Wisconsin too. Minnesota for sure, okay? I'm pretty certain it's Wisconsin. Just go to the website, johngaltmortgage.com. Boy, this is the worst ad read on the planet. I've screwed up everything. Here's what I'm not going to screw up. Alpine Cabin in St. Cloud, Minnesota. That's another sponsor of our show. The good people, and I can say good people because it's not just Steve at Alpine Cabin Tree. They're good people at Alpine Cabin Tree. There we go. Wow, you would think I've never done this before in my whole life. Let's get into it. Tina Smith. Dawson, when we were doing show prep, you didn't even know who she was, right?
No, I had no idea. I think that I got her mixed up with one of the other old ladies with that same exact haircut somewhere in the government. There might be a couple of them.
Sometimes when I go to another person on set, that's my opportunity to drink some coffee, and that coffee almost got spilled on my computer there, so thanks for that. Yeah. I mean, literally, if Amy Klobuchar had not run for president, I don't think people outside Minnesota would even know who she is. Like, very not important person. Did she chair the Judiciary Committee, maybe? No. That would have been...
No, there's something else, though. She's definitely a little bit more known than Tina Smith, because Tina Smith, she's not in there as long, but also she just doesn't make any kind of impact. There's not anything where, people around the country are talking about Tina Smith.
Right. I mean, you couldn't find a more common last name than Smith, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Smith is the most common last name, right?
Unless there's some thing from a different country that I wouldn't know. Yeah.
Well, Muhammad is the most popular name. Most common last name in America.
Yeah, I don't think it's Smith anymore.
Right there on Google. The most common last name in the United States is Smith.
Okay, there we go.
And it's been the most common since the country's founding. You know, I don't think I've ever seen that before. It just seemed to me that had to be it. So there you go. Tina Smith. At least Tina, she's got something going for her there. I mean, if it's Chris Smith, there's just no chance anyone knows who that is. So there you go. So, I mean, no one knows who she is, but she's retiring, not for political reason. By the way, she was appointed by Mark Dayton. You have to remember, right? Al Franken stepped down in disgrace. We hadn't seen him since he showed up to the SNL 50th anniversary last weekend.
Yeah. No, and the Democrats totally backstabbed him in that situation where they tried to Me Too him, and that was mostly Kirsten Gillibrand from New York who led that charge. But, you know, he had the leadership against him, so he chose to resign. And, of course, like you said, Dayton puts in Tina Smith because she's just another placeholder puppet who will do as she's told by the Democratic machine. There hasn't been a single time when Tina Smith ever takes a consequential vote against her party. There hasn't been a single time where she stands up for Minnesota in a way that goes against the National Democratic Party. So she's just another puppet who is willing to vote how she's told. No original thoughts going on upstairs with her.
Brad says, wow, it's trivia day here. You learn more here by accident than anywhere else by design. Well, that's right. This is your media outlet that's not funded by USAID. Okay, this is capturing the attention of national news. I'm going to show you a clip from CBS. I think this is Morning News or Face the Nation. Major Garrett's filling in. Okay, I'm just going to warn you. This is complete amateur hour by CBS. Now, it's partly because maybe some of their funding is going away with this crackdown in USAID. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to warn you, the national media, you could just see Major Garrett does not want to talk about this issue, knows nothing about it. They have a guy that's somewhat competent, understands Minnesota politics. But here you go. Here you have it. CBS News talking about the U.S. Senate race in Minnesota now.
This decision is not political. It is entirely personal. But it's not lost on me that our country is in need of strong progressive leadership right now, maybe more than ever.
Welcome back. That was Minnesota Democratic Senator Tina Smith announcing she's not going to run for re-election in 2026. That, of course, leaves her Senate seat open for next year's midterm. Now, Republicans have not won a Minnesota Senate race since 2002. President Trump lost the state to Kamala Harris by 4 points in the last election, the closest margin in 8 years. CBS News political reporter Hunter Woodall joins us now to handicap, at this very early stage, this open seat race. What do we know?
Major, this was, kind of speculated for a while in Minnesota political circles that, Senator Tina Smith wouldn't run again. Minnesota Democrats have a deep bench. There's a lot of ambitious Democrats who could run for this seat. Minnesota Republicans, however, there's been a lot of issues in the state party over the years. They've struggled to organize. So this is a prime pickup opportunity for Republicans if they had a well-organized machine in the state. They don't really have that right now.
What about Governor Tim Walz?
Right there. Now, stop right there. Now, that's actually a correct take. I have hopes for the future. Certainly no one would believe Alex Plekish can take over on January 2nd and completely change the whole GOP within a matter of what we have, a month and a half already.
Right.
So it's not on Alex Plekish. It's not a diss on him. It's really a diss on the string of events that led up to it, but certainly David Hand, former chair David Hand. Mm-hmm. But they have not had a well-oiled machine. They haven't won a statewide since Pelini's re-election in 2006. They haven't won the U.S. Senate since Norm Coleman got elected in 2002. They're in a really bad position. And, with people like Walter Hudson saying we should just get rid of the grassroots people, anyone affiliated with Action for Liberty, if they have their way, they'll definitely not win in the future.
Right.
I am a little bit more optimistic. I do think that this thing has a chance. All right, let's go ahead and play the rest here, Dawson.
It's very interesting. I contacted a source close to the governor yesterday. He said, hey, he hasn't ruled it out yet. He may also run for a third term as governor, which is something he can do in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. And is there a sense that any other prominent names, Ilhan Omar, for example, someone that Republicans talk about almost universally negatively, might be interested in this race?
Well, it's funny
okay, just stop right there.
Representative
Do you see
Omar's
what I'm
congressional
saying? Hold
campaign.
on, stop. You see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't seem like Major Garrett really cares about the story. Am I
Right.
reading that? Okay. Yeah. Like,
Right.
this is like complete amateur hour by CBS. Now, I understand you probably got a lot of funding from USAID, and that's going away now with Elon and Trump. But, I mean, at least give us a little bit something here. This is an important news story of Minnesota.
Right.
I mean, these are not known names. I mean, we do have Governor Tim Walz, right? Like, literally the failed vice presidential candidate. We have Ilhan Omar, the squad, right? Royce White, former NBA player, made national attention, just the way he ran his campaign. These are not no-namers. Well, some of them are. Go ahead, continue playing.
Out a fundraising email today saying, the headline was, "What do you think? Should Ilhan run for the Senate?" That's something that Republicans, they would love in Minnesota to see Representative Omar run for the Senate seat. They see her as somebody they think they could beat in the general election. Ilhan Omar, though, she has, she can fundraise. She's a well-known national name, and it would be an interesting dynamic in that race. Minnesota Democrats, though, have a lot of other options in this race at this point.
There's a name I've heard, Peggy Flanagan.
Stop. Put on social media. No, you've never heard that name ever, Major Garrett. You've shown you don't even care about this segment. You don't really care about Minnesota politics. You have not heard Peggy Flanagan's name ever. I bet money on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, you've heard of Tina Smith because it's the most common last name. Flanagan's way down that list, especially the way she spells it. All right, continue on.
Media very quickly after Senator Smith.
And she is what currently?
She's the lieutenant governor of Minnesota. She said, "I intend to run." That's a well-known name in the state. She's well respected.
Hasn't filed the paperwork yet, but making every social media suggestion she's going to get in.
Exactly, and there's a little bit of that awkwardness, though. Governor Walz saying, "Hey, I haven't ruled this out." His lieutenant governor saying, "Hey, I plan to do this."
Right. How about neighboring Michigan?
Okay,
Gary
that's
Peters
good enough. So then they go into Michigan, and obviously they're going to have the same dynamic. And by the way, Michigan's very closely like us, although they actually win presidential elections in that state. I mean, it's just so funny. Like, they do kind of understand at CBS News that there's a little bit of a rift between Flanagan and Walz, but like the idea that anyone, if we went on the street right now, Jesse, I would say, what do you think? Just random sampling. Let's go.
How many people know who Flanagan is?
Yeah, let's say a mall, right?
Yeah.
Let's start with Tim Walz. I would imagine
80 to 90%.
60? No, I'd say 60 to 70.
You think?
Not after the
I would think it's a
presidential
little
What do you
more
think,
at this
Dawson?
point, but
not after his run for vice president. I think it's much higher than 60.
70?
higher.
What do you guys think at home? 70%? It's not. It's 80 starting to get pretty high for recognition, right? Okay, so anyhow, let's just say at least 70 or greater, right?
okay.
What is just handicap? What is Flanagan?
10.
I don't even know if it's 10.
Right. I mean, I think that there's enough politicos in the state, enough people that are paying attention that would maybe recognize her name. But even with that 10%, how many of those people could tell you anything about her? Probably almost none. So,
Right.
She's in the same position as Tina Smith, where nobody really knows who she is. The only thing that she's known by for conservatives is the fact that she wore that crazy T-shirt that says "Protect Trans Kids" that has a knife on it. So, other than saying that, threatening people with knives or whatever her shirt was supposed to imply, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That, like you're saying, she doesn't have name recognition, and so I would think it's probably around that 10% area. Of maybe 10% of Minnesotans could recognize who she is with her name.
Well, let's get into the potential candidates. Dawson put together this graphic here. Let's look at the list of people on the DFL side first. First, as you heard from Major Garrett at CBS News, not Fox News. He's been away from that for a while. We got Angie Craig, CD2, which probably is the most formidable opponent, I would say, if I'm just handicapping it from the get-go. Keith Ellison, Peggy Flanagan, Ilhan Omar, Steve Simon, Secretary of State Steve Simon, and Governor Tim Walz. These are the big names that are popping out right now. Dawson, Jesse, we can take these down here in a second and give you some more info on them. But let's look at the GOP side. These are the names that are being floated out there. Julia Coleman, who's a state senator. Karen Housley, who's a state senator, has run she's actually run a couple failed statewide races because she was a lieutenant governor candidate under
Including against Tina Smith.
Yes, correct. She's already lost to Tina Smith. Adam Schwarze, who I see in Facebook, Patrick Dennis, one of the viewers in our audience says, support Adam Schwarze for Senate. Great guy. We know nothing about him other than he was a Navy SEAL, so perhaps we should have him on the show. Pete Stauber, congressman from CD8, Doug Warlow, who was a twice AG candidate and former state rep. Royce White, which goes with no need for an explanation. We've had him on the show many times. And Ryan Wilson, who came the closest in breaking the Democrat stronghold on statewide politics. He was the closest to breaking that. I think he was within, a 1-point margin? Something like that,
right, against Blaha, state auditor. So his name is still rumored out there. Maybe we want to go to the A3, Dawson. Let's go ahead and check out this first. So this is Adam Schwarze, who has announced that he is going to be running for this U.S. Senate seat. He announced pretty dang quick after Tina Smith had announced that she was going to retire, which potentially gives signs that he was going to be planning a run regardless of what Tina Smith was going to be doing. And usually when someone announces something like this, like Tina Smith, everybody wants to jump the gun because they know that the news is focused on that Senate race for that time being. So people can check that out on their own. That's the press release that he has put out, basically saying that he's a Marine. I've looked a little bit into him.
Navy SEAL and Marine.
Yeah. And he, he's been a contributor for Alpha News. Like I said, I don't really know who this guy is, so it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. But someone who already has a defined opinion on Adam Schwarze would be Royce White. So let's go ahead and pull up the A4, and let's go ahead and see what Royce White has been saying on X. Obviously, he is controversial, not afraid to say what he thinks. He said, I'll read through the whole thing. I can't remember who this is. Yeah, he's talking to Dustin Grage, so he says, "You're still a cuck. Electable is a cuck word. Electable and moderate. Hear it and fear it. You believe in Ukraine funding. You push the deep state Russia narrative. You're an embarrassment to yourself and this party. Emirite. Debates are going to be epic. Adam Schwarze, neocon. Julia Coleman, rhino neocon. Let's see the talent and see the debates now. No need to wait. You see how bad I crushed you? You're a pro-Ukraine Ron Paul guy. That's an oxymoron. You're a moron." Okay, so that's good right there. So Royce White is basically saying here that he thinks that this Adam Schwarze is a neocon. Sometimes guys with military experience end up falling into that ideology. Like I said, I don't know if I know that of Adam Schwarze myself yet, but if that's the case, obviously the last thing I think our country needs right now is more neocon thinking. Donald Trump is highlighting exactly that the American people wanted to see peace with that Russia-Ukraine war as the perfect example. So, depending on if Adam Schwarze is a big pro-Ukraine guy who wanted to, send our country into debt in order to fund a failed war effort, that would be a massive problem. So, so that's what Royce White's out there saying. He's also saying the same thing about Julia Coleman. But before we get to Coleman, let's talk about Pete Stauber, who would also be a competitive choice within this governor race. So let's go ahead and pull up the A5, Dawson, because within that we'll see from Tory Van Oot, this is a statement from GOP U.S. Representative Pete Stauber in response to a question about whether or not he will run for a Minnesota U.S. Senate run. He says, quote, "Minnesota needs a much better voice in the U.S. Senate than what they've had. Republicans in Minnesota must nominate someone who will fight for all Minnesotans and our way of life and not promote extreme socialist ideologies that have devastated Minnesotans and our communities. Let's raise our expectations." So, which it's also interesting that he says it like that, who will fight for Minnesota and our way of life. That's also what his campaign slogan is. So is he saying that he would be willing to run for that spot? Who knows? He's not being extremely clear on whether or not a run for the U.S. Senate is something that he would want to do. Considering that he is probably pretty safe in CD8, he may be more comfortable to just stick with his CD8 race than going for a U.S. Senate race, because this is going to be much more difficult. It's a statewide race. Even though there's an opportunity for Republicans, it is still going to be very, very difficult for any Republican to have a chance. So it's going to be difficult. Then we'll go to Julia Coleman, who also Royce White labeled as a rhino neocon. So go ahead and click that link and maybe just do Control F for Coleman, just so people can see that she has, said that she is interested within this race. So she tells WCCO that she is considering a run for the Senate. So this isn't just speculation. This is, that it's out there that she's saying that she would want to run. And let's go ahead and pull up the A7, Dawson, because Julia Coleman, during her time within the state Senate, people know her as Norm Coleman's daughter-in-law, but they don't know the type of woke legislation that she has helped push. So while she was in the Senate, she was pushing a bill alongside the Democrats this was a radical bill that was, adding all this gender woke language. I think it got rid of the word breast from breast milk. I'm not sure where they think milk comes from. So there was all kinds of woke stuff. Go ahead and scroll down to the bottom because, I wrote up this article. Go ahead and click on the last paragraph there, Dawson. Emailed our organization. Click on the paragraph below that, Dawson, right there. So after I expose her and, let everybody know, email her and make her take her name off this bill. She takes her name off of the bill and immediately, got back to me within like 2 minutes of me emailing her. So this is just a problem that shows that either if she is not going to be reading the bills that she is going to co-sign on until other people do it and expose it to we the people. That's a massive problem. We can't have someone who's just willing to sign along things with the Democrats. And Julia Coleman also was not present during the child transgender votes. During all of the amendments, Julia Coleman was nowhere to be found. But when it came time for the final vote, she voted no. Where was she during all of those other votes? Would have been nice for the Republicans to be there. Had her and Karen Housley and the other skipping rhinos been there, there would have been a couple of amendments that would have passed. So we can thank Julia Coleman and a couple of the other rhinos for not showing up on that child transgender vote.
I will say, it is kind of nice to have a politician where you email her and then she gets back to you.
I know. I was thinking that's actually a benefit there.
It's
it says
like,
that
kind of
she's
right.
responsive.
She did
but
the right thing.
But it does beg the question, why are we on a bill?
Right. She did the right thing. She took her name off the bill, but she never should have been on that bill in the first place. So if you don't have those types of principles on the onset where I don't even know how she would agree to these types of regulations in the bill. And then let's go ahead and pull up the A8 because Doug Wardlow, as we had mentioned, is also a potential candidate. People have not been talking about this as much, but he is absolutely, it looks like he is considering it. He says, with Tina Smith leaving the Senate race, Republicans have a huge opportunity in Minnesota in 2026. We need strong, tested candidates who stand with President Trump and have a track record of taking bold action under fire. So that would seem to indicate that he is giving some kind of consideration to a run himself. And let's see here. And then we'll go on to Kristen Robbins. Let's go ahead and pull up the A9, Dawson. So Rhino
this
Kristen
was not
Robbins.
on our list before, but
Yep. So and you're right. She's another one that is being talked about. So Minnesota, this is from Laura Weiss. She says Minnesota House member Kristen Robbins, a Republican, is considering a run for U.S. Senate with Senator Tina Smith retiring, per a source familiar. Robbins worked in Congress earlier in her career. This is in her fourth term in the Minnesota House. So Kristen Robbins is also one of the people on this the fraud committee within the Minnesota House, which is largely just smoke and mirrors. It's largely WWE politics. And Kristen Robbins is also the author of the fake Never Again bill. So let's go ahead and pull up the A10 because Kristen Robbins is out there testifying on behalf of her bill, suggesting that the governor should still have some emergency powers. So let's go ahead and play this video real quick here.
Oh, sorry.
So I think the governor absolutely should have some emergency powers. So I
Okay,
think the
that's
governor.
good. So I just want people to be able to hear that. She's saying, I think the governor should be able to have some emergency powers. She even said earlier on that when she was testifying on it, that she was taking the governor at his word. She was taking Tim Walz at his word when he was saying that he was going to lock the state down for just a short period of time. So that's the type of leadership that Kristen Robbins has. And I also see in the comments that she is a Nikki Haley supporter. That's also very true.
no, she was the chair of Nikki Haley's
Right. Yep.
Minnesota.
She was an endorser, and if you endorse Nikki Haley, that tells you exactly the type of person she is. Another quick comment I want to get to: I see O'Bannon saying, "Jesse, that would not be an accurate description of Schwarze." So, if he wants to discount it, then I would absolutely. I mean, I cannot wait to see that debate between him and Royce. Then, if he is not a neocon and he's saying that that's an inaccurate description by. Royce White.
You're just reading Royce White on that one.
Right. Yep. I'm just reading what Royce White is saying.
Pick up the B5 real quick, Dawson. This is Adam Schwarze. While Jesse was talking, I looked up Adam Schwarze's website, and it should have about section here. It says, A former infantry unit leader with the United States Marine Corps, Adam Schwarze enlisted with the Armed Forces after he graduated from John F. Kennedy High School in Minnesota. During his time with the Marines, Adam Schwarze took undergraduate coursework at the University of Minnesota and received his Bachelor of Science in Political Science from there in 2012. Wait a second. God, it's so weird to think about this guy. He retired 21 years, but he's younger than me. That's so weird to think of that. Okay, yeah, I would, if I would have stayed in the military, I would have been, I would have been mid-20s already in terms of time. Because during COVID, I would have hit my 20.
Yeah,
that would have been interesting. Afterwards, he shifted his military career to a different branch and commissioned as an officer in the United States Navy. He is currently enrolled at Harvard Extension School to pursue a Master of Arts in Liberal Studies in International Relations. His studies concentrate on counterinsurgency in the Middle East policy, but also working to see, that kind of does sound like he would be down that neocon route, but also working towards certificates in international security and nuclear deterrence. Outside of his educational responsibilities, he enjoys a range of hobbies and is affiliated with the Veterans of Foreign Wars. The nonprofit provides veterans of every generation assistance with post-secondary education, emergency financial relief, and other needs. In his free time, he is fond of scuba diving, boating, and skydiving, as well as running and weightlifting. Why doesn't he say Navy SEAL on here?
Yeah, I don't know. You would think that that would be definitely something you would want to promote about yourself.
Right.
And then, you know, counterinsurgency, at least the way that that sounds to me is it sounds like U.S. involvement in foreign elections and foreign...
No. That's...
What would it mean then?
No,
what would,
it's referring to a
counterinsurgency mean?
So it's referring to a strategy that was adopted in like the surge era, 2006 in Iraq.
Okay.
So basically, it's a funny term. We go over and invade a different country, and then Al-Qaeda comes in, or people that are affiliated Sunni Muslim extremists, and we call them insurgents.
Oh, okay.
It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Okay, so it's basically taking on. It's like
how do you fight?
Creating intel on.
Well, it's a very multifaceted strategy of fighting what we called insurgents. This is actually what got David Petraeus so popular, as he wrote the manual for the counterinsurgency fight. That's what the surge was all about. Because we go into Iraq, I mean, just like in the Gulf War I, like it didn't take long, and we got rid of the Ba'athist Party. I mean, that terminology is not even in our vocabulary these days.
Yeah,
like it wasn't tough. We end up finding Saddam Hussein hiding, and he gets executed by a trial of his own people. So then we stay in Iraq, and then what we end up dealing with is this new breed of Muslim extremists. Al-Qaeda moves into Iraq, which they weren't apparently there under Saddam Hussein. That is breeded into many different other things, most commonly ISIS, right, which is a modern day threat. Anyhow, long story short, it's
does he have policy positions on his website yet?
No, this looks like just a
personal
website. Placeholder.
Okay
Because I don't think he's still technically in yet.
Right.
Well, let's invite him on the show, and we might have you said Royce might be on Thursday, so
talking with Royce.
What's that?
Yeah, I said talking with Royce.
Okay, so I'd be willing to have this guy, you know, if he served our country, you know, it's worth at least chatting with the guy. Give the devil his due, right? I mean, at least we have some people that think he is. Brad says Schwarze was a SEAL. It's interesting he doesn't write that on there. You would think he would write that. Have you noticed how many Navy SEALs there are in U.S. Congress right now? Yeah. It's actually interesting. So if you think about Navy SEALs, we're talking about one of the most elite units out there, okay? They're just a peg down from Army Rangers and Delta Force, right? But so I mean, you're talking about 0.0001% of the population, but I think there's like 5 if not 6 Navy SEALs in the U.S. House of Representatives right now. Not so you got Marcus Luttrell's brother,
guy from Montana.
No, but Marcus Luttrell's brother. Why can't I think of Marcus's brother's name? Whatever. But his brother, his twin brother. Marcus Luttrell is the guy from Lone Survivor. You've got one of my favorite congressmen, Eli Crane, who seems to be a very good voting Navy SEAL. The guy from Montana, as you're referring to, is Zinke.
Yeah, Ryan Zinke.
Then
right.
you've got Van Orden from Wisconsin. That's 4. I'm forgetting some. There's a 5th one. Oh, patch guy, Dan Crenshaw, 5. There's probably 6.
Yeah, maybe.
So, I mean, 5 divided by 435 is what? What is that? That's well over 1%, right? Like, that's pretty impressive.
Yep.
So, yeah, they're outdoing their population. I Patch McCain says Tucker 91. I like that. All right, so, yeah, and I'm not certain if there's any in the Senate, but, yeah, that's just in the U.S. House alone. All right, continue on. We got some
and
Democrats
then
in
let's quickly go to the A11 just to round out the Republicans, because Karen Housley is saying that she is going to, she's also being a listed person as someone who may be running for this. So Tori Van Hoot says GOP State Senator Karen Housley, who ran against Smith in 2018, tells me she isn't ruling out a run for the open seat, but that her focus is on the Minnesota legislative session and getting a budget done for now. Okay, so
Sure.
Right, exactly. I mean, that'd be interesting if her priority is the legislative session. Man, I wish that was her priority while the child transgender vote was going on, instead of going on a vacation or whatever.
She went to a conference of legislators in Detroit. Remember that?
Yeah, that's
and we
a
just
vacation
assumed it was margaritas at the bar at that point. Like, she couldn't be bothered to vote remotely.
Right.
Like, can you imagine? Well, I've missed a crucial vote because I was at a conference about voting.
Yeah.
What?
Doesn't make sense.
Oh my God. Well, it makes sense in their world.
Right. And then we can move over to the Democrats, because the Democrats obviously are heating up as well. Let's go to Peggy Flanagan, the 812 Dawson. Flanagan has made her announcement that she is going to be running for the seat, as has kind of been previously indicated. She is maybe kind of stepping ahead of what Tim Walz would prefer. So it's interesting that she had done this immediately. And I went on to her Blue Sky. Go ahead and scroll down. I tried to go on her Blue Sky. I don't think her announcement is up there. So I guess the liberals maniacs on Blue Sky will have no idea that Peggy Flanagan is actually running. And, like I said, this is kind of stepping on Tim Walz's toes, because there's rumors that Tim Walz may get into this race. So, Dawson, let's go ahead and pull up the A13 and start at 550, because this is where Tim Walz kind of talks with Esme Murphy about the Senate race, about running for re-election, and what exactly he would do. So let's go ahead and play this clip here. And first of all, it's unbelievable that if this poll is accurate, we got 55% of morons in the state of Minnesota, because I don't know how anyone could approve of the job that Tim Walz is doing here. So let's go ahead and play that clip, Dawson.
At 55% in this one to 41% disapprove. Actually, that's very good. What are you going to run for a third term? You're sitting on $1 million in your campaign treasury.
Well, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to Minnesotans that I think the way of governing here, that we continue to try and make life better for folks. We're willing, if we get it wrong, to come back and try and fix it. I've talked to folks about that. We've been through a lot together, COVID, social unrest.
Kind of sounds like a yes.
And I think right now we'll get through this legislative session, and I think if you see numbers like this and you see the public being there, and I feel like I'm able to do the job, I think I would look at it. And I continue to tell people I will do, if the people of Minnesota think it's the best for them, I'd be honored to continue to serve.
Right. Okay, so that's good right there. Go ahead and pause it.
Yeah, it sounds like he's doing it.
To me, it sounds like he is running for re-election. He's going to be running for governor. That's how I interpret
I thought
that.
I read it the opposite way.
Oh, you think? No,
I
think
read it like he's running for Senate.
Really? No, I interpret that as he's going for governor for re-election there, and I imagine what he would most likely
I'm sorry.
do.
Did I miss the context? I didn't have my headset on right away. Did I miss the context where they were referring just for running for re-election?
She was talking about running for a third term.
Right, a third term
I am
governor.
so sorry. Then yes, I would agree with that. But was that after the Tina Smith announcement?
Yeah, that's very recent. So
okay, sorry. I don't always see your links beforehand, so I should have my headset on. So then I would have read that as running for governor.
Right, and so what that also tells me is it's going to set up an interesting situation for who he would select as lieutenant governor instead of Peggy Flanagan, because this person would be the true successor to who he wants to fill his shoes after governor. So obviously it doesn't seem as if Flanagan was that person that he wanted it to be.
Right.
So in that case, he is going to select someone, which obviously the guess is up in the air for who that could exactly be. And then let's go on to Angie Craig, the A14 Dawson. So Angie Craig is, she's considered to be the most moderate of the Democrat representatives, even though she votes with the Democrats on everything. She says, I'm going to give serious consideration to the open Senate seat in Minnesota. I'll be talking with Minnesotans in the weeks ahead and the best way to continue to serve my community, and we'll make a decision in the near future. So this is going to be, she is going to be a major contender if she were to enter into this race, and she would perhaps have maybe the more moderate wing of the party that would be consolidating around her, while the socialist wing of the party would be looking towards someone like Ilhan Omar. So Ilhan Omar is also throwing her name out there as a potential candidate. Her spokespeople, go ahead and scroll down a little bit there, Dawson. There's a quote from her spokesman in there. Let's see. I'm not seeing it right in there.
Do you know how easy she would be to beat?
There we go. Progressive Representative Ilhan Omar didn't rule out a run either. Quote, Congresswoman Omar will be talking with Minnesotans about the future of the Senate and the DFL party in Minnesota. So that's one of her spokesmen that's out there saying that. I think you're about to say how easy it would be to win that race.
Yeah, it would be one of the best ones to run against.
Anyone who is a strategic conservative, anyone who is a strategic Republican would say, we want Ilhan to be the Democrat nominee because that is the best person for the Republicans to be able to defeat and to be able to go against. Some people would, wanted Ilhan Omar to be replaced with that Don Samuels. I always say, let the Democrats be as radical and extreme as they want to be, and let them expose themselves as the type of thinkers that nobody would ever want in power. So if Ilhan Omar were to get in that race, I think that that could set up a perfectly divisive situation for the Democrats to exist in. And then Keith Ellison, Antifa Keith Ellison, is also considering throwing his hat into the ring. So after a press conference announcing a plan to buy off Minnesota's medical debt, Attorney General Keith Ellison and St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter were asked about a run for U.S. Senate. Melvin Carter said no, he is running for re-election, while Keith Ellison says no decision yet, he'll decide in a few days. So that just shows you right off the bat that Keith Ellison is throwing some consideration into this. There's a few other names that have been rumored out there, so things that aren't exactly that you can't find any proof for necessarily, but things that are just being tossed around from the Republican side. Kendall Qualls, Michelle Tafoya, Brad Finstad, Michelle Fishbach, and Ryan Lonegren's attorney, Chris Maddle. And then on the Democrat side, other rumored names would be Jacob Fry, Melissa Franz, and Melissa Hortman, Betty McCollum, and Kelly Morrison. There's been some Republicans and Democrats who have each ruled it out themselves, like Tom Emmer. So we're not going to have to worry about globalist rhino Tom Emmer trying to get a promotion into the Senate. And there is one guy who's a perennial candidate. He's a teacher and a perennial candidate. He just runs flip-flops parties. He ran as a Republican for the U.S. Senate last time. Now he's ran as a Democrat. Calls himself a Blue Dog Democrat. His name's Chris Seymour. I just want to give him notice that I see that he's out there running, and he's running as a Democrat this time. It's probably his 8th time running for the U.S. Senate or some other office. So he's going to be on the ballot, probably going to range around the same 2% that he normally gets.
He says pro-peace, pro-people, pro-America first, U.S. strategic, focused approach, strong commitment to achieving positive outcomes for Minnesota and U.S. citizens.
Yep.
I like the random
But the thing is, like, when he's talking, I've seen a couple of his videos just to kind of be like, what is up with this guy? What's he talking about? And it's so broad. You can't even figure out what the hell he's saying. It's like, give us some policies, give us some ideas, but it's more just like the idea of what he thinks he represents rather than what those ideas actually are.
There's another name. I don't know if you know this.
What's that?
Finke's been mentioned.
Yeah, that's right. Finke has been mentioned. I haven't been able to find anything solid on that one either. But Finke has also been a name that's been thrown out.
I'm just going to say this. It's not something that you could just totally dismiss, because the left right now is all about identity politics. And they just are celebrating the first transgender U.S. congressman. There's not one in the Senate. Mm-hmm. Well, Murkowski, but other than that, there's not one in the Senate.
Would the GOP rather go up against Ilhan Omar or Lee Finke?
That's a tough one. I think Omar, but that's a tough one. I think either or would be probably a fine choice by the Republicans.
I would say Finke, because Finke not only comes with all the same baggage that Ilhan Omar, plus
the same beliefs,
plus the people that are like, that's a dude in a dress.
Yeah.
But wouldn't be even close to as polished as Ilhan Omar.
Right. And also, Ilhan's got that built-in Muslim support to a certain extent. And Finke
the Muslims would go against Finke.
I'd hope so. So, it's going to be a fun one to follow and track. So we will keep people up to date on all of the people who end up announcing. And I think that this is a competitive race if Republicans conduct themselves correctly. Also, I should mention Libertarian Rebecca Whiting, who had run for the U.S. Senate last time, is also throwing her hat in the ring to run again. So that will also be interesting. We'll see if any other third parties end up emerging out of this race.
He's been in for like the whole show.
The whole show? Has he really?
Yeah.
Joining us, a former professional in politics in Minnesota, was senior advisor to Michelle Bachmann and her chief of staff when she was in Congress. Andy Parrish from La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Hold on. He has left since being in. So
he left?
He knows that things are going on here soon, apparently.
Wait, you just told me he was in, and you let me do that whole intro?
I tried to stop you. You wanted to go.
Oh, my God.
He's in.
He's in. And host of WIZM 1410 in La Crosse, Wisconsin, Andy Parrish. How you doing, Andy?
Do you got me on video here, Jake? Or
I've
not?
got you. Yeah, we're just clearly amateur hour over on our side.
Anyway, so you guys were talking about what Democrats are going to run. I think Norm Coleman might.
Yeah. Well,
Tim
it could be Norm Coleman
Tim Pawlenty could
versus
get the Democrat nomination.
Norm Coleman versus daughter-in-law, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have two Democrats to choose from there, and then you've got, Tim Pawlenty. He could certainly win the Democratic nomination, I think.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Don't rule him out, Jake.
Absolutely.
Well, he's ruled himself out. Him and Al Franken and a few others are all saying that they don't want to do it. So I think
Isn't it funny that...
What's that?
Jesse, isn't it funny that people who are no longer relevant, when something like this comes up, they're like the first ones to throw their name out there to say, "Oh, I'm not running." It's like, well, wow, dude, you died of a drug overdose in the 80s, really?
Dude, I was at the airport probably about a decade ago, I think it was, and getting off the plane, first class, one of the first people getting off is Norm Coleman, and he walks out off the whatever, into the terminal, and smile on his face, looking around, and no one noticed who he was. No one or cared.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember looking at the face. I'm like, oh, that's so funny. He doesn't really matter to these people. Now, with that being said, these guys find a way to be relevant again. You noticed how he was following Pete Hegseth around in all the Senate confirmations. And he's been a lobbyist, on K Street, so it's not like he's not that relevant. But, certainly in Minnesota, I don't think a lot of people really know or care about who he is anymore.
But, I think he's Republican Jewish Coalition or some other Jewish organization now.
Right. So he's running the whole
Rudy
thing.
Boschwitz. I mean, Jesse Ventura. I'm just going to throw names out because that's what they're doing at this point. And it's going to be a tough road, no matter who the Democrats nominate. It's going to be a tough road for any Republican to win that seat. It's a tough seat, guys. I'm just not going to lie. It's
winnable though. It is winnable. There's a shift.
It is winnable. I mean, it has been won, but it's a tough seat. And, even if you get Ilhan, I mean, I remember people saying that about Bachmann. If they nominate Bachmann, there's no way she'll win. She's too radical, and we smoked everybody.
Right.
And so, it's just, you got to be careful you got to have the right nominee.
Right. You do have to have the right Well, you have to have the right plan too, right? It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a total amount of effort. All right. So let's.
That's a $25 million race, I think.
Oh, easily.
Least,
yeah. Well, at least it's competitive. It's going to be more competitive than it was before. Before we get to the topic I brought you on, Andy, let's go to this March primary bill. Andy, you've had your experience in Minnesota politics and certainly endorsements and stuff like that. This is a bill right now that's been introduced by Dwayne Quam in the Minnesota House, a Rhino, and co-sponsored by Jeff Howe in the Senate. And what would this bill do there, Jesse?
Yeah, this bill would realign the primary date to.
You guys, Dawson, I can't see them. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Does he never see us?
No. Here, give me just a second.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead. So.
Yeah, so this primary bill would move the primary date to make it in complete alignment with the presidential primary date, moving it way up. This would prevent people from being able to have endorsing conventions like they do. It would screw up the entire process. It's proof that the establishment wants to eliminate the endorsing process. Like you said, this is a Republican bill in the House by Representative Dwayne Quam. Maybe he's nervous that the grassroots in his area do not want him any longer. He's been grifting in office for like 16 years. I don't know how much longer he needs to be in there to get anything done. So Dwayne Quam, and then you look at the Senate with Jeff Howe and Mark Coran, you got to wonder, why are these people doing this? And I think that it's clear that the establishment hates the endorsing process. If they could just have primaries, it gets them a little bit of an easier situation because they can realign their resources and have it completely focused on a single date rather than having to worry about what the local grassroots people want. And I think that this is a bad thing for all people involved, the establishment, conservatives, or even grassroots or anything else. So I think that this is a bad thing because it doesn't allow people to flesh things out by themselves. It takes away the ability for local people to, the most involved people, the grassroots people who go to these endorsing conventions should have the authority to be able to decide who their state representative is more than the average voter, and that's why this process exists. And so when we have the establishment trying to overthrow that and completely institute a system of a primary only, it just goes to show that the establishment is... they are not happy with this endorsing convention system because it allows the grassroots to have a voice.
Marty, 1967.
Yeah, you're right, Jesse. We've got to get you an I'm right hat, by the way, because you're dead right. And here's the reality behind it. They've been trying this for a long time, and they've wanted to get rid of the endorsement process, not necessarily so they can win it, because they can always go to a primary. What they've always been concerned about is what Action for Liberty has done, which is take their endorsement away from them. Mm-hmm. And so that is the real crux behind this, because like I said, so they don't get the endorsement, they go on to the primary.
Right.
But now who can take that endorsement away? The grassroots can. Can you do it with 30,000 people? It's going to be awfully hard, but it's a lot easier, and you can hold them more accountable. And I'll add one more thing to what you added there. The grassroots that go to these conventions, that do these endorsements, they are the ones who have done the most research on these candidates, and these are the ones who have vetted them on behalf of Republicans within that district. That's why they're delegates. That's what they do. That's why they're elected. And so we really need to trust that process, and we need to trust the people that are making those decisions, because they're the well-informed ones.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this is actually interesting. So Marty, 1967, says he also is chairing the Elections Committee, which is true. Mm-hmm. So Dwayne Quam obviously controls what bills get heard in committee, and this is his bill. Then Jay Courier says Jeremy Munson posted earlier today that Quam and Coran are pulling their names from this bill.
Yeah,
well,
and I just went to fact check, make sure that was accurate, and Jeremy Munson has posted that Quam and Coran have agreed to remove their names from a bill which was introduced during the messy start of the 2025 legislative session. It goes on, so assuming that
But that
Jeremy
doesn't even make sense. He's the author of the bill. He's the only author in the bill.
Right.
How does he pull his name from it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Coran's a co-author, but...
Can you?
That
have,
means
you mean have a bill removed from?
No, you can't. The bill has to have an author. So, in other words, is he actually removing the bill? Is he withdrawing the bill? Like, what are you saying?
You would have to figure that the bill would be withdrawn,
unless he found somebody to co-author it, which is often what happens in situations like this, where Dwayne is going to get the heat, and then he'll say, "Okay, I'll take my name off of it," and since he's the chairman, he'll just put somebody else on there, and he'll go along with it. I mean, that's what they do.
They'll pull a fast one on us. We won't see right through it. Like, that'd be so hilarious if that's what they do. Well, anyhow,
they do.
Yeah, if that's what they do, it doesn't matter. You own it, Dwayne Quam. This is your bill. You can put your name on this bill, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, now let's go. Dustin, pull up the B1. Go to line 611. What it's doing is it's tweaking the language right now. I'm sorry. Go to line 64. It's tweaking statute 2024 section 204D.03 subdivision 1. And it says state primary, except as otherwise provided in the subdivision, the state primary shall be held on, and scratches out second and then puts in first Tuesday in, scratches out August and puts March. Okay, so just so you guys understand, the Minnesota statute requires a precinct caucus. That's where delegates are selected. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen. I think we had one in March, but it's generally happening in February, right? January, February. I'm sorry. Did I get that screwed up? Is it January, February? I'm already forgetting. it's going to be roughly February.
Well, the caucus will take place on February 1st.
Okay.
So, BPOU conventions and endorsing conventions would happen shortly after that period.
Yeah. Sorry, I was way off on the March. They usually happen either January or February. So you're going to go to caucus, right? And then on February 1st, there's just no way all these BPOUs could have endorsements before that, and what would the endorsement do? So it literally nullifies the whole endorsement process.
Yeah. I mean, I would be fine, Jake, with moving the entire process up in time.
I've heard June and May. June doesn't sound terrible.
But keeping the process the same.
Right.
So I mean, if you're going to move it up, still have your precinct, still have your Senate district, your congressional district in your state. I'd be great moving it up. That just gives us more time. That gives campaigns more. I mean, that's the scarcest resource any campaign has is time.
Well, but of course, it also gives the Democrats more time, right? And remember, the Democrats have less discipline on their endorsements than the Republicans, right?
I mean, so we kind of want to push it close to November as possible for them.
Right, yeah, for them, you would think you would. So what a just ridiculously stupid bill.
Right. It benefits both the Democrats and the Republicans equally in that sense. Because, like you're saying, because it would give them the same exact amount of time. And also one thing to consider, too, is that with this presidential primary date, some people might be wondering why there's separate dates in the first place. Well, the reason for that is because Minnesota wants to have some voice in who the president is within the primaries. So if you have it so late, the primaries would already be decided by that point. Minnesota would have absolutely no say in who the Republican or Democratic nominees are if you put it later in the year. So the reason that they have it March on that Super Tuesday is to make sure that Minnesota has a voice and gets to be able to have, direct their delegates to the candidates that they want to support. So it's not that I'm opposed to there being a March primary date for the presidential primary, but when you combine these two things, like we're saying, it completely nullifies the endorsement process.
Here's another good point. So Billy Tutu and Jay Courier are saying something about filing deadlines, which are like, according to Jay Courier, I think this is true, filing deadlines are 70 to 84 days before an election. So in other words, someone has to know and be ready to run. It just moves that timeline way further back.
Right.
And just realistically, now, if you're running a U.S. Senate race, you probably do anyhow. But if you're running for the Minnesota House, like, you have to know by, December of the previous year. Like, some of these things just don't happen that long, right? So that's another argument against it. What about the people that actually really have a busy life, right? All right. Andy, the reason I brought you on, I had a post the other day, and you guys are just going to enjoy this because you know me. I wasn't necessarily a Trump guy. I wasn't not a Trump guy. I wasn't like a hater.
Yeah, you were not a Trump guy, Jake, on the first election. You were not Trump.
Well, I mean,
who'd you vote for?
I went third party in the 2016 election.
2016. That makes you not Trump, right?
Yeah, right. But I mean, like, I don't want to say I was a never Trumper guy. Like, there's the people that literally didn't understand Trump. I understood Trump very well. I understood what he was doing. My problem with Trump was he was not a principled conservative. All right. And I would still argue in his first term he wasn't. But I did vote for him in 2020 mostly because of just how bad the deep state was and what they were doing. The final straw was the killing of the Hunter Biden story. That was like, screw you guys. This is the biggest middle finger to them is voting for Trump. Even though in many regards I didn't think Trump earned my vote. I was much more bold and excited about voting for Trump in 2024. I've stated multiple times on the show why, even though I'm still critical of Donald Trump, and I probably will always be because I think everyone should be. Here's my post, and I want to discuss this with you guys because, Andy, you've actually had contracts with Trump's campaign in the past. You've been you were probably a pretty early on guy with Trump, but then Jesse, your name is MAGA Jesse, so we all know where you stand. And I like surrounding myself by MAGA people because great people. This is what I wrote. I think this was on Friday. Trump has the potential of being one of our best presidents. He's on the cusp of ending the Ukraine war, slashing intrusive federal government, getting Arab countries to pitch in with Gaza, improve child health problems, reverse radical left cult policies, and fix our border. This is only week 4. He's far from perfect. I don't agree with all his policies or how he does some things, but results talk. These are monumental issues we've been facing for the last several years, and there's a guy in office actually doing something about them. I pray he is successful. Let's go to Brad Ganser here real quick.
Yeah, we got a $5 Rumble rant from Brad Ganser. He says, Jake, your biggest gripe was Trump's inability to cut the budget. How is he doing now?
Fair point. And that's why I'm saying, like, literally for the first time in my life, Andy, and you've known me, we've been in politics. I mean, going back to doing radio in college together, right? I have never even thought that government was going to be cut. I never believed in these people. I was a big Ron Paul supporter because I'm like, man, if that guy stood a chance of getting elected, which he stood a very small chance, I'm like, he would actually do something. Well, like Elon Musk and Donald Trump seem to be like Ron Paul on steroids right now. I'm loving it.
Hold on. Keep in mind, don't put him in the Hall of Fame yet, because in that same budget bill, they're raising the debt ceiling. And why are they raising the debt ceiling? I mean, if you're going to cut the money, you've got the money to pay your loan, right? So I'm cautious as to why they're going about it this way. I still don't trust the House Republicans on this.
Oh, right.
I just don't, because as soon as I saw that the debt ceiling was being raised, I thought this isn't necessary. So why are you doing it? If you're actually going to cut, why are you going to raise the debt ceiling? For those of you that don't know, the debt ceiling, when they raise it, that just is Congress authorizing the Treasury to sell bonds to whoever wants to buy them, because that's our way of printing money, essentially, without printing it. And China buys it, and Japan buys the most of it, next to the Social Security and Medicare trust funds. But that's all it is.
Mostly Americans. But once again, I'm not going to opine on just the House Republicans here for a second, because quite frankly, all of them have to lead Trump, right? At this point, my statement is that Trump might go down as the best president. And it's been 4 weeks, but I can't imagine more monumental wins. I'm not saying he's flawless. There's some issues I have, but even one of my biggest issues was his statement about Gaza, which at this point seems to be very obviously revealing itself. He made such a crazy statement in the sense that people take him serious overseas, and they don't want American soldiers in the Gaza Strip. So all of a sudden, Arab nations are like, yeah, we better do something about Gaza, which no one was willing to do, right? Egypt wouldn't take the Palestinians. Jordan wouldn't take the Palestinians. Now they're like, oh, crap, we don't want America in the Gaza Strip. It's like, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. That is a massive problem to solve. And you would think, well, that's probably good enough for the first term. Nope. He's right now trying to end the Ukrainian war, and I believe it. I believe this is actually going to be ended. And that is go ahead.
Jake, with Gaza, there were always contingency plans that we had to go up north of the Gaza Strip, which is only about as wide as Miami, by the way. Miami's 110 miles, and the Gaza Strip is about the same. But we always had plans to flood the tunnels from the Red Sea from the north, because we can get refuge up there with the mountains. And if Hezbollah, I might be wrong. It's Hezbollah up there. If they cooperated and didn't kill us, we'd be able to fortify it. And so the plan was to flood the tunnels, and then I'll just head right into Gaza and start kicking ass. And I think they believe that Trump will do that. I mean, look at the tariffs. The tariffs that he threatened on Canada and Mexico were absolutely brilliant. Because if you look at, it's either these Democrats are outright liars, or they're idiots, or they're morons, or they're Lydiatrons. I guess I'll make up a word and call them all three. But the reality is that when you're buying 85% of everything that Mexico makes and 75% of everything that Canada makes, and they're only buying a combined total of 15% of everything we make, we have huge negotiating power. Huge negotiating power. And they knew he would do it. And I think that the world knows that Trump means business, as we're Biden. They just didn't ever take the guy seriously. Same with Obama. Back to the best president ever. I mean, look at who we have as conservatives that we worship for some reason. Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. I mean, really?
Well, I think it's the persona of Ronald Reagan that we like so much. I think when you divorce the policies, if you could divorce the policies, some of the policies from him, I mean, not all of them were bad, obviously, but some of them were bad. It's like
30 some odd tax increases, right?
Yeah, but you know, certainly he goes down in history as kind of like JFK in the sense, and Obama in some regards, like the character of the guy that you want. Like if you divorce the policies, obviously, of Obama, like you would say, yeah, that's kind of like the statesman, the kind of good communicator that you want in office. Obviously, you really have to divorce the policies from that guy. So I think that's in many regards as Reagan's viewed as that guy. Because remember, we were in college during the second term of George W. Bush, and I mean, my God, the guy, they all called him a moron. The guy stumbled. He couldn't speak, right? And his dad just kind of came across as like some establishment guy. So it's like really Reagan was the guy until Trump came along.
Yeah, but you can't divorce the policies, and you know that.
Well, you can. Yes, right.
You know, and so, you know, if I have to go back to probably the most conservative president in my lifetime, embarrassingly, I have to say, and I go back to Carter, embarrassingly, I have to say probably Bill Clinton. And then I would go on to Trump. Now we'll see what Trump does. Trump has a chance to surpass that, but our party has been embarrassing of people that we put up as Republicans, and then, oh my gosh, we finally get a Republican in Trump. And now the world's going nuts. I mean, this is what these guys should have done all along. Every one of these Republicans that were elected should have been exactly like Trump and just did what they said they're going to do.
Yeah, I know. That's the interesting thing. The Democrats are so up in arms about this stuff. And it's like he literally campaigned on it. Like, you don't like the fact that they're actually cutting government and actually exposing the fraud, waste, and abuse. That's like what his whole campaign was about. Mm-hmm. Like going up against the deep state.
Jake, remember when government would shut down and of course, as a chief of staff, you're an essential employee, but I would always declare myself as non-essential just so that the junior staffers could work and get paid. But I always found it interesting, like if we have non-essential employees, why are they coming back to work?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, and that's part of this buyout that Trump is doing. We're going to get smaller through attrition. You know, there are people that this is going to be really good for and really healthy for. This is going to be people who are close to retirement, who just can't quite get there yet, but all of a sudden now they can, you know? And so it's not like the whole government's going to turn over. We're going to lose some people that are close, some lifers, some deep state people, and that's it. And that's good.
Yeah, but what I see is something so monumental. And this is why, like, I'm not just saying the best president in modern day history. I'm saying like ever. And I know how ridiculous that sounds, but it's like,
I think I have to go back to Teddy Roosevelt before it starts getting competitive. You know, and
yeah, well, Teddy would be like our kind of guy. I mean, he was a
no, I know. I'm just saying, you know, in that same breath of leadership, you know, but that, and, you know, obviously the founding fathers, Washington,
no
is
one's
up there.
close to Jefferson. Nobody is close to Jefferson.
Well, Jefferson would be my favorite president ever, and I would argue that there were some that, in whole, like Coolidge and stuff like that, policy-wise, were preferable, but they didn't make a mark. Part of leadership is, you know, being the right guy at the right time. And, Courier agrees with me on Coolidge. But part of it is just being the right guy.
Prohibition, right? You know, he was president during Prohibition. You know, a lot of people seem to forget that. He wasn't exactly the libertarian that people seem to think he was. He was more just kind of stayed out of the way of a lot of issues. So.
Well, yes, but that was pretty huge at that time frame. Because there was
it's also
there was a Great Depression.
A true liberty guy would get in the way of the Prohibition issue and say, "What are we doing here?"
Well, hold on. You don't need the president during an amendment, though. Amendment lives outside of the president's say. So.
Well, sure, but he could fight. I don't think he ever.
Well, I'm not a scholar on. Hey, I'm not a scholar on what his position was on Prohibition.
Opposed it. I'd have to look into it. But
the 14th Amendment, it was Andrew Johnson. He actually campaigned against it, though he could do nothing about it, as you said, because it takes 66% in both houses and then 3/4 of the legislature. So there's nothing the president can do, but they can use their bully pulpit for that. I don't know if Coolidge did. Hey, if I can, somebody made a comment that I saw on the screen about Trump being a populist, and I just want to address that quickly. He is, but the beautiful thing about this country is our Constitution is a safeguard against total populism. If you look at history and some of the leaders that have risen to power through populism, it's not a good list. It's just not. But they didn't have a constitution to constrain them, and so Trump does.
We got Mark 108 saying Coolidge roaring 20s. Mm-hmm. I love how we have actual people in our audience that understands presidential history, and that's part of my argument on Coolidge was he got out of the way in the Great Depression of 1920, which was actually, in many regards, could have been as bad as the Great Depression, what we refer to the Great Depression nowadays. And my argument always is FDR screwed that and prolonged the Great Depression because of his policies. Like, FDR is viewed in schools as a great president, but he was a terrible president in many regards.
The same liberals that hate him are the same ones that say, Trump is saying he's going to run for a third term.
Yes.
So it's like, hold on a second.
They had to pass the 22nd Amendment because of FDR, who ran for 4 terms and died, like a month into his 4th term. But it's like everyone just followed the lineage of Washington and didn't run a third time until freaking FDR did, right? Like to the point where he dies. I think it was like a month. It was not that long after he got inaugurated the fourth term.
You have to remember, was it Frank? Was it FDR? Yeah, it was. I just Googled it. It was Teddy Roosevelt. And who are we talking about? Which Roosevelt?
FDR, Franklin.
All right, then I'll shut up,
Delano.
because I was going to say, guys, wait a minute. Teddy Roosevelt did the big land grab and made everything a national park. And
Right.
But I get them confused. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Should be done by the states, obviously. But
we have Republicans.
Right. Honestly, there's worse things to do than there's worse things to do than giving people areas to hunt. There's worse things.
Unfortunately, that's not what he did. Unfortunately, he did the national park system. You can hunt there.
Preservation.
So he took some of the prime hunting grounds in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
and not just that, but the Constitution is explicitly clear on how much land the federal government can own. It's 10 miles. It's 10 miles square, which is 100 roughly.
Oh, the
miles.
Constitution says that? Where in the Constitution?
It does.
Does it? Sure about that, Andy?
I'm 100% positive it says it's 10 miles square in the Constitution.
You go find where it says that in there.
See, Andy's not wearing his hat right now, so.
Oh, I'm right on this.
Oh, are you?
I'm 100% right on it.
By the way, I'm not for the federal government owning a lot of land. By the way, obviously.
Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
What's it
to
say?
Exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as made by secession of a particular state. The reason was
you're talking about jurisdiction, aren't you? Isn't that what you just read?
They can own up to 10 miles square, because when you were looking in Philadelphia, after we had some soldiers that wanted to get paid after Revolution, and they weren't paid yet, and they came and they stormed the Capitol. I think it was it Aaron Burr who talked them off the ledge? Because I think Aaron Burr served with them. I'm not sure. But after that, they tried to call in the National Guard, but the governor declined that. So they said, we've got to have our own area. And that's how they came up with this 10-mile square area.
Okay, I'm reading it right now. Article 8.
Yeah, Brad Ganser and Terry Time both have Andy's back here.
Oh, do they?
Yep.
Yeah. And so when you have the federal government coming into sovereign states and taking land, that's a problem, because who are they to do that? We have that going on right now in Wisconsin. We have Tom Tiffany, who's normally a conservative rock star, and of course the guy from Duluth, I don't know what's his name, Stauber or whatever, signed on to it. And my rep did, and this is one of my gripes with them. They're actually taking the Apostle Islands from a state park and they're trying to make it a national park. And in that, they remove most of the hunting rights and fishing rights for white folk. Not for everybody else, but for us they do. And I can't. Why would they take our land? Why would we be okay with that?
Right. Yeah,
By the way,
obviously,
you're
what the leftists say is that, if the federal land is not there and it's given back to the states are going to sell it to the highest bidder. But obviously,
so what? That's their right.
Yeah, I'm sure. Right. Obviously, I'm just saying some people prefer there being some sort of forest and park and whatnot. But obviously, we don't want the federal government to be the ones enforcing that.
By the way,
right, because they should not own land. Those powers are left to the states.
There's a really interesting thing, and I'm not a scholar enough to understand, but there's a parentheses where it says not exceeding 10 miles squared. So I'm wondering what that parentheses is. I don't think the Constitution had a parentheses there.
That's a size. Jake, that's the size. So 10 miles square would be the size. It's a mathematical formula.
What is the
10
math?
times 10.
No, but I'm saying in the when I look this up online, it's got in parentheses. So does the Constitution have parentheses there, or is this later added? Is that just a general understanding?
This was amended later. This was when we were already in
Philadelphia. That wasn't amended.
What?
That wasn't amended. It's not an amendment. This is Article 1, Section 8.
You're right. It was while we were writing it. That's right, because the soldiers wanted to get paid.
Mark 108 says they did not want the capital in any state. Fair point.
Yep.
Well, yeah, long story short, I agree with you on the federal government buying a bunch of land. By the way, that's the other thing is, so we're so far into debt. So it's like, all right, if you're into debt and you have trouble paying back the debt, then what is the other side of the ledger? What are the assets? If you're looking at the balance sheet, what are the assets? And the assets are, Yellowstone, Yosemite. What are we doing? If we got to pay down the debt, are we selling our national lands? Is that what we're doing? And so in many regards, it's like there's another problem with the national debt. So going back to my main argument is, Andy, I've never seen a real belief that we're going to cut a penny of the federal government. And all of a sudden I'm seeing, well, geez, we just cut off the workforce. We just cut like huge slashes of the workforce. We're probably going to get rid of a lot of this waste, fraud, abuse. USAID, I don't know, I haven't looked today, but the website wasn't working last week. And that's a $50 billion organization. It's like it's bigger than the size of Minnesota government in 1 year. So it's like, wow, we actually have a chance of finally doing this. So yeah, I mean, you could look at historic presidencies. Washington's greatness was certainly even before he became president. But it's like, here Trump is trying to save the union, trying to save a country that literally I thought was on the verge of collapse. And that's the way I read it. And I thought, all right, well, Kamala has no solution whatsoever. Trump at least gives us a chance, but I didn't think he had a high chance of actually solving the issue because I looked at his first term. And quite frankly, now I just look at his first term as a massive failure when you look at what he's already done this first 4 weeks. And then, like, if you're trying to save this country, you need to do what he's doing, and he's doing it, and that is all the respect in the world from me. And obviously we're 4 weeks into it, so we can't go crown him the best president ever. But I'm saying, if you look at what's going on and if you play this out for the next 4 years, and it's going to be like this, it's going to be a roller coaster. But if he continues on this path, I think he might be the best president we've ever had.
Well, he's got a long way to go. There's a lot of real estate between here and surpassing Jefferson, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard to get there, but, you know, I think because he is a lame duck and I think he's so angry about what happened to him that he's actually doing this. The biggest thing that Trump can do at this point, look, he might have the opportunity for 2 more judges. And if he has the opportunity for 2 more judges, that's going to give him, what, 6 that he'll have appointed of the 9? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, you look at Clarence Thomas, who's in his late or early 80s. He could be retiring. Sotomayor, people, you got to have to remember too, she's like 82. And
is she really that old?
Yeah. And so like the average Supreme Court justice doesn't last much longer. And so, you know, there's a potential for 2. I think Clarence Thomas at the very end, depending on the Senate makeup, will retire.
Oh, she's 70. She's 70. Stop with the fake news.
She's not that old. Or she
is. Young. I'm looking on Wikipedia right now.
Is Clarence Thomas 80 then?
Oh, yeah, he's older.
Yeah, and Samuel Alito is 74.
Yeah.
And Alito would be more likely to step down since he's a conservative.
You're right. You're right. So I think his legacy is going to be in the courts. I don't necessarily think it's going to be cutting $50 billion here. I mean, it's great to see that he cuts that, Jake. But as you rightly pointed out, that's the size of the Minnesota budget. But as then I'll rightly point out, that's out of like $4 trillion budget, which is nothing.
He might be ending one of the most deadly wars in our modern history, though, and he's solving some bit of the Middle East dilemma. He's literally, we're seeing soldiers end up on the border right now. Mexico's putting up soldiers on the opposite side of the border. You can't undermine the fact that we have this woke culture right now. The leftists, it's a cult. It's just crazy. And he's taking huge stabs at that, which, you know, once again, like, that's a big problem. And, you know, the other thing that he won't get a lot of credit for, because, you know, it's hard to tell just how bad Kamala would have been, but like literally standing up for the First Amendment, like Kamala was a massive threat to that. So
I hired Stephen Miller for his first job on the Hill, and it's just so awesome to see where he's at now. But he took an interest to what I had an interest in, which was national security and illegal immigration at the time. What's funny about Mexico is the reason they don't want to put their troops on the border is because it affects their, I don't want to say repatriation of money because it's American money, but one of the biggest parts of Mexico's economy, $1 billion a year, comes back to families from illegals working here in cash. $1 billion a year is remitted back to Mexico. And so if you remember during the Obama administration, we had all these caravans coming up from Guatemala, and they were coming up and across the border. Mexico actually built a wall on their southern border. They don't call it a wall, but look at it. It's a damn wall. And the reason
I know, because it's the Mexican term for wall.
Right, because what they didn't want, Jake, was they didn't want these Guatemalans and others coming up, cashing in on their good time of remitting American money. And so now they actually have to do something about it.
Right. All right, let's, can you hang with us during the post show, Andy?
I'd love to see. I want to see how you guys do that too. So, by the way, thanks for having my day started off stupid. Now, I guess I'll have to tell you about that. Stupider than anything I've ever done before, Jake. I'll have to tell you that in the post show.
Okay, now I'm very interested in that. So Andy's going to hang out with us in the post show. If you are a premium subscriber, we're going to be on locals in 1 minute. If you're not, go to truthhurtsnews.com. Click on support us, or if you're on Rumble, just click on join. You get access to our post show, $8 a month. It helps out tremendously. The big things we're going to tackle. Or you can do an annual and you get like a month off, which is a really cool deal. Thanks to our Rumble rant. I think it was Brad Ganser, if I remember right. Thank you to our great sponsors, Warren Wessel of Keller Williams Realty. The good people at Warren Wessel, Keller Williams Realty. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, give Warren a call at 612-419-7453. And if you're buying a home, give the good guys at John Galt Mortgage a chance at financing that home. Go to johngaltmortgage.com. Also brought to you by Alpine Chemistry in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate it very much. We'll be live with the post show in 1 minute. Take care.